Okay, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. We'll carry on, inshallah. Just quickly, let me ask, just recap on what we talked about last Jum'ah.
We were talking about firstly when the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr, they were going through the desert of from Mecca to Medina.
Yeah.
They met a woman called Ma'bad,
Yeah.
Ma'bad. And she was a lady who lived between Mecca and Medina, and they were really hungry and they were looking for like some food. And then the lady, she had 3 goats there, but she had they were really weak and they didn't have no milk. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, let me try. So he milked the goat and then loads of milk come out.
MashaAllah.
And he gave it, I think he gave it to the lady first, then to Abu Bakr, then he drank last.
Yeah, it was the last drink. MashaAllah.
And then she, basically when her husband come home, she gave one of the best descriptions of the Prophet ﷺ to him, that in the out of all the Seerahs, one of the strongest. That's one bit. And then on the way to Medina, he prayed in a masjid Quba.
Yeah.
That was the first masjid.
MashaAllah.
And then when he went to stay, when he came to Medina, they were debating whose house is he going to stay at. So the way they judged it is where the camel will stop.
Yeah.
So the camel stopped at Abu Ayyub Ansari.
MashaAllah.
And he hosted the Prophet ﷺ. Obviously, there's a reason behind it, why specifically chosen by Allah to host the Prophet ﷺ, and the hospitality that he showed the Prophet ﷺ. And then he briefly talked about what was the Prophet ﷺ plan when he came to Medina.
Yeah.
So firstly was to build a mosque, and then secondly to get all the Muslims together.
Yeah.
And then thirdly have a treaty with the Jewish people there, so they can live in peace.
So what was the first priority? What was his main focus at the beginning of the Prophet ﷺ? As soon as he got to Medina, what was his main priority?
To build a mosque.
Yeah, so the masjid was number 1. So that shows the importance of the masjid in Islam. And like I said before, the masjid at that time, it was not a place where people, they come and do salah and go home. That's it. Just to go, come Fajr salah, Dhuhr salah, Asr salah, Jum'ah, and just go home. It was a place for the community, for the Muslim community, to build the love for one another, to build that respect for one another, to learn about the deen, to come closer, to get closer to Allah. So it was a vibrant place of the community, is the masjid, teaching kids, so anyone that has any kind of concern, they would come to the masjid. So the masjid was the hub of the community at that time. Unlike the masjids nowadays, obviously there are some of them who are kind of active and do things for the community, but some of them are not active enough to fulfill the duties of the masjid Islamically, how it should be in Islam. So that was priority number 1. And then priority number 2, what was priority number 2?
Building the Muslims together.
Yeah.
So it was his people from Makkah come. They got different culture to the people in Medina.
Yeah.
And then the 2 tribes who accepted Islam in Medina, they had war between them for hundreds of years. So it's just to break the barrier.
Yeah, mashallah. So was the bringing the Muslims together, the peace and the harmony of the Muslims. And obviously even in Medina, we said the 2 tribes which are Khazraj. Yeah. So Aus and Khazraj, like we said before, there was so much hatred, so much fighting going on between them for more than 100 years. So it was obviously, that is a challenge in itself to bring those people together. But that shows you Islam does bring people together, regardless of their, ethnicity, color, skin, social status, economical status. Does not matter in Islam. We're all together. The main thing, what distinguishes between people in Islam? Yeah, taqwa, piety. Yeah, that's That's the only thing that makes a person better than another person Islamically, is piety. Other than that, nothing matters. So that shows Islam does bring people together. Unlike what we've seen before, and like I keep saying, we need to be aware of events that are happening and taking place as we're learning about the Seerah. You see before, now you can compare this to some other things that happened in Mecca. What do you think it is? So look now, so priority number one for Rasulullah ﷺ was to build the masjid, and priority number two was to bring the Muslims together, to build that Muslim society. So that shows you Islam does bring people together. But what was happening in Mecca? Something which is in a way the opposite of this. Which is the opposite of this in Mecca. That's in a way, that's the reason why Rasulullah ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Medina.
Like the battle between the Muslims and the Quraysh. Did you see that? Because when the Prophet ﷺ come to Medina, he's trying to make like alliance with the Jews so they can live in peace. In Mecca, they couldn't live in peace or practice their religion. Like.
So what did the Quraysh or the Meccans want to do to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
Want to kill him.
Why?
Because they didn't accept Islam. They didn't believe. They want to change their religion from the forefathers.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So now just look and compare. So the Quraysh, the people of Mecca, obviously they did not want to become Muslims, which was fine with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But however, the problem was because they've seen so many people becoming Muslims. So that was a concern to them. And one of them, like we said, is Umar radiallahu anhu and Hamza radiallahu anhu. So these are the leaders of the Quraysh, some of the strongest people in the Quraysh becoming Muslims. So that becomes a concern to the Quraysh, and that was worrying for them because obviously now it means the Muslims are becoming stronger and more people becoming Muslims. So for them, what did they think? Even Umar radiallahu anhu, as we mentioned, when he wanted to kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he thought we are one community, we used to live in peace, love, happiness before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam became the messenger, and now look, we are divided now. So he thought, or the Meccans and the Quraysh, they thinking that Islam, this religion, this message that he's conveying to us is dividing us as a community and as a society. So Islam is causing division between that society. And this is going to prove the opposite. What's happened in Medina now, when Rasulullah migrated from Mecca to Medina and he brought people together, this is an evidence and this is a proof that Islam brings people together, but it doesn't divide people. It doesn't cause division between people. That's very important for us to understand and remember as we learning about the Seerah. So that's very important. So remember, the Meccans, obviously, definitely, without doubt, they are wrong. But it proves Islam does not cause divisions between people. It does not divide, but it brings people together. And obviously, the Aws and Khazraj coming together, the Muhajirin and the Ansar coming together, that is a strong evidence that Islam brings people together. So that was priority number two. Priority number three is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Obviously, like we said, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was preparing Medina for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam before he migrated to Medina. So some people became Muslim already. But obviously there are, like I said, 3 Jewish tribes that lived in Medina. So now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had another challenge. Number one, the second one obviously, and number one in this regard, is bringing the Muslims together. But then the stage after that is, how are we going to come together as Muslims and the non-Muslims? Can we live under one society together or not? Is it possible or not? Can Muslims and non-Muslims live in the same country, in the same society together with love, peace, respect, no conflict and no problems? And that, what will happen now, that will show that it is possible. Muslims and non-Muslims can live together, can respect one another. Each one of them can practice what they believe in, what they want. So there's no problems. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to, like I said, build that Muslim society. So the focus in Mecca was building the Muslim personality, the Muslim individuals. But after is focusing on the Muslim society, building the society now. So now he's going to set like a constitution for the society. How are we going to live together? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sat down with some of the leaders of those tribes. So what are the three Jewish tribes? Who remembers the names? Yeah, mashallah, yeah. So these are the tribes. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sat with them, and then they started writing like a constitution, basically, an agreement between all of them that they're gonna follow so that they can live together in peace, and they have to stick to it. So number one, he said that the Muslims from the Quraysh, and he mentioned here obviously the name, one of the names of Medina. Who knows what was the name of Medina before they called it Medina? Yeah, Yathrib. Yeah, mashallah. Yathrib. That was the name of Medina at that time. Yeah, Yathrib. She said the Muslims who came from Quraysh, and the ones from Yathrib, and those who will come after them, meaning those who will become Muslims after them, and those who will become like one of them or part of them and will fight with them and support them and everything, are one nation. So now he's saying to them, you are one nation now. Doesn't matter, you're from Medina, you're from the Quraysh, you're going to come from another part of the world, you are all one nation now. So then obviously the treaty, he started mentioning about the Muslims first, and then after that he will say, all these Muslims, regardless of their tribes and their ethnicities, they have equal rights and equal responsibilities. So they all have rights and responsibilities. So there is no difference. He did not favor any tribe over the other tribe whatsoever. He said, you all have rights and responsibilities in this society. And then, now he's showing the Muslims, the believers, that you should support one another. Meaning, if we say that we are Muslims together and we are brothers or sisters and we love one another and we are one ummah and everything, meaning we need to support one another. It's not something, just a word that we say it, but actions, like we say, speak louder than words. So he said, any believer who has a lot of debts, he's in debts, for example, the Muslims who have enough money, they should support him and help him pay the debts. So that shows you that the Muslims, they need to support one another. And then he said the believers and the pious, if someone, for example, is trying to oppress one Muslim, trying to oppress the other Muslim, all the Muslims, all the believers, they should stand up with the one who's being oppressed. So it's a duty of the Muslims to stand up with the ones who are being oppressed. Even if it's a Muslim person oppressing them, they have to stand up with those who are being oppressed. And obviously he said to them another article here on this agreement of or the constitution. He said that a believer does not kill his Muslim brother. So Muslims are brothers, they do not kill each other. And then obviously he said to them that a Muslim also does not kill his Muslim brother because of a non-Muslim. Meaning, you have, say, like a Muslim person has a non-Muslim friend, for example, and just because of something that happened between that non-Muslim and another Muslim, but he's going to support the non-Muslim over the Muslim person, and he's going to kill the Muslim because of that. But here, just one thing that I want to mention, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Unsur akhaka zaliman aw madluman," meaning support your brother if he's the person oppressing or the one being oppressed. So the Sahaba asks him, if he's being oppressed, so meaning injustice has been done to him, so we understand that, so we have to support him. But if he's the one doing injustice to others or oppressing someone else, how can we support him? So they were, in that time, they were confused. How can we support him both? So then he said to them, obviously, it's easy to understand the last one, which is if he's being oppressed, okay, injustice is being done to him, so you have to support him. But the first one, if a Muslim person doing injustice to someone or oppressing someone, how you support him? By stopping him. Supporting him, it doesn't mean encourage him and support him to oppress others. No, meaning you stop him. That's what he means, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by supporting him, meaning stop him from oppressing other people. And it doesn't matter whether a Muslim or non-Muslim. If a Muslim person is oppressing a non-Muslim and doing injustice to non-Muslims, you still have to stop them as a Muslim. It's your duty to stop them, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like oppression and does not like injustice. And even Allah said, يا عبادي إني حرمت الظلم على نفسي وجعلته بينكم محرما. Oh my slaves, oh my servants, I made oppression forbidden for myself, and I made it forbidden between you, and do not oppress one another. And then he said, لا تظالموا. And then he said, oppression is darkness on the day of judgment. And then there is a hadith, اتقوا دعوة المظلومين, Rasulullah saying, protect yourself from the dua of the one who is being oppressed. Meaning, if you oppress someone, you do injustice to someone and you oppress them and they make dua to Allah against you, Allah will answer that dua sooner or later. So that's very dangerous and very important for us to know. And then now he's going to start talking about the Jews. Now he said the Jewish people are a nation, are one nation, meaning the Jews between them are one nation as well. They are a nation themselves. They have their own religion, and so the Muslims do have their own religion as well. And then he said, whoever does injustice to the other, meaning he's causing problems for himself. Whether a Muslim or a Jewish person, if a Muslim person is doing injustice or oppressing a Jewish person, now he's causing problems for himself, meaning he needs to take responsibility for his own actions, meaning he's going to be punished. And vice versa, if a Jewish person does that to the Muslim person, he's going to be punished. Meaning they all have equal rights and responsibilities. So all the Muslims, they have equal rights and responsibilities. And now when it came between the Muslims and the Jews, they all have equal rights and responsibilities. And then he was obviously another article here, meaning they should respect one another and they should feel safe and secure living with one another. So obviously now Rasulullah ﷺ bringing the Muslims and non-Muslims together, meaning living in peace, happiness, safety, security in the same country, in the same society, in the same state, in the same place, in the same area. As long as we stick to these articles and this agreement, like we say, happy days. There's no problems at all. So here, obviously, there are so many lessons to learn from this as well, because it shows that Islam does not force people to become Muslims, because these are things that we learn from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because I'm sure that you do listen in the media, for example, or certain books, you say, oh, Muslims, a lot of people became Muslims before because they've been oppressed or they've been forced to become Muslims. There's no compulsion in religion. There is no force in religion. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Whoever want to be a Muslim, a believer, And whoever doesn't want to be a believer, you don't have to be a believer. You have your own choice. So no one can force someone to become a Muslim. And that shows you clearly that Rasulullah ﷺ did not force the Jewish tribes to become Muslims. So he had an agreement with them that we're going to live both in peace and happiness and respect one another. That's it, no problems. So this is very important for us to understand and learn. And obviously, these are facts that you could use if you come across people who say that Islam or the Muslims before, they used to force people to become Muslims. And that's not true. So,
I have a question. It's not like it is related.
Yeah, that's fine.
What is the wisdom behind Hukm al-Ridda?
Well, that's obviously a deep thing to go to. Obviously, Ridda obviously is someone who was a Muslim, obviously, and then he became a non-Muslim. So Ridda means someone who wasn't raised, obviously, because sometimes we say he was born a Muslim. As we know, every person is born on the fitrah of Islam. Then his parents, they make him a Jew or a Christian or whatever. So someone who'd been raised all his life as a Muslim, and then one day, I don't know, when he's 20 or 30 or something, he decided to be a non-Muslim. Obviously, the judgment in Islam or the ruling, obviously he needs to be punished. They kill him. But obviously, let's clarify something here. No one can do that. Say, for example, someone that we know, he's a Muslim. All his life, he'd been a Muslim. And then one day, tomorrow, for example, he said, I'm not a Muslim anymore. That's it. I don't want to be a Muslim anymore. No one can go and punish him, because that's not for the individuals to do. That's only when he lives in an Islamic state until the Muslim leader, there is a Muslim leader, is the one who does the judgments against him. He's the one who orders the Muslim army or something to punish him. But individual people cannot do that. So no one can do that as an individual person. But the wisdom behind it, certain things, we do know the wisdom behind them, or some of the wisdoms, not all of them, and certain things we don't know why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, told us to do that particular thing, for example. But one of the wisdoms, according to the scholars, they say, because if that becomes a common practice in the Muslim society, then people will be taking Islam for granted, and they will just find it as an easy thing. So every person in society could say, well, you know what, I don't want to be a Muslim as well. So then one person encouraging the others, and then they can just be like playing with the religion and with the belief in Allah. He can decide tomorrow to become non-Muslim, and then next week he can decide to become Muslim, and then next month he can say, I'm not a Muslim anymore. So he can just be in and out of Islam anytime they want, in and out. Times when they don't want to do salah, they feel like their iman is weak, they're so lazy, they're like, I don't want to become a Muslim now, I'm not a Muslim now. So obviously then the Islamic rulings does not apply to them anymore, because they're not Muslims. So that's it. And then the time when they think like, oh, I can do it, now I'm going to become a Muslim. So these are one of the wisdoms, obviously, as the scholars say, like people will take Islam for granted, and then they'll be in and out of Islam anytime they want. And obviously that's not something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for his servants. And the same, we can give an example. Say, for example, now, someone, I don't know, living in any country, for example, and they have a president or a king or something, and he says, well, you know what, okay, so the law is to stop by the red light on a traffic light. You have to stop. It's not, you know what, for this week, I don't want to follow any kind of law. I want to be driving through the red light. I want to be driving on the zebra crossing. I want to drive on the pavement. I don't want to follow anything. And then the following week, he want to follow the law. So see, that becomes chaos then. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he shows you the way, this is Islam, this is not Islam, this is the reward for this is the outcome of this. If you want to become a Muslim, this is the path you have to follow, and this is the where you're going to end up. if you want to be a non-Muslim, this is the path that will take you that way, and this is the outcome of that on the Day of Judgment. But someone to be playing games with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not allow that. Because, you know, so yeah, so just briefly, obviously, but there are obviously,
It's very complex.
yeah, there are more things that could be mentioned about that according to the scholars, because then sometimes they go to why that person becomes a murtad, like, you know, came out of the fold of Islam, why, for example, and so many other things.
Because now there's loads of Muslims who just by their or by name, but they don't practice at all. So we can consider them as like Muslims, but just they are Muslim by name, but they don't do any Islamic practices.
But well, that to be honest with you, that depends. It depends. If they announce that they are not Muslims anymore, that they don't believe in Islam anymore, only then we can say for sure that they are not Muslims. That's it. They're not Muslims at all, because they've announced it. They said, I don't want to be a Muslim. I'm not a Muslim anymore. Meaning they announced that they're not Muslims. But if someone who doesn't want to, because we all know a lot of Muslims like just by names, but they don't practice, they don't fast, they don't do salah, they do nothing. But it depends. If they select someone who doesn't do salah, or let's not go to the salah because there's a big debate about that. Say someone about Saum, the month of Ramadan, fasting. Obviously, it's one of the pillars of Islam, and we all know that fasting is compulsory, it's a must. If someone says, a Muslim person, we have two people are Muslims, one of them said, I don't want to fast. Fasting, I should fast, but I'm just lazy, you know, just following the shaitan. I got bad people with me. They're not encouraging me to fast in the month of Ramadan, and shaitan whispering to me. But I know I should do it. May Allah forgive me. But one day, inshallah, I'll repent and do it. And then we have another person who is a Muslim, whose name could be anything, Ahmed, Muhammad, whatever. And then he says, no, fasting is not compulsory at all. No, it's not one of the pillars. Yeah, so that's definitely then, the scholars say that person is not a Muslim. The same if he says salah is not compulsory. Where does it say salah fard? No. So that's completely, he came out of the fold of Islam, because he rejected one of the pillars of Islam. But someone who doesn't do it just because they're lazy and their iman is weak, that's a different thing altogether. The scholars, they don't put them out of the fold of Islam because they're not doing it, not because they reject it or they say it's not fard, but just because they're lazy, they just going the wrong way at the moment. So Allah could forgive them if they repent to Him. But the others, but like I said, like you said, true, a lot of Muslims, unfortunately, in today's society, they don't practice Islam, they're just Muslims by name. And that is obviously, there are so many factors that participate to that. Like we said from before, one time, is the way they've been raised in their family house, for example, the society where they grow up, the community. Sometimes they've never been encouraged to do salah or to practice Islam properly. They haven't seen good examples in the house when they were growing up. Or the opposite. Some people, they grow up in a strict Muslim house, for example, but the way the parents raised them, it was the wrong way. That's what pushed them away from Islam. Like I know so many people, like I know a family, for example, the father was very strict with the kids. He used to take them to like Muslim schools in the beginning and everything, but he was too strict with them. And even his family members, people like who know him, they say to him, you're too much with the kids. You shouldn't be too strict with them. But he was too much. And then when they grow up, they go to the age of 17, 18, about two of them now, they're not even Muslims anymore. Just because of that. But he didn't have that balance at the beginning. So it could be, there are different reasons why people didn't practice Islam and they are Muslims. So, but like I said, it's important for us to know that when you have kids and you raise them, that's the biggest project in a person's life. Because a lot of the Muslims, unfortunately, and this is the Seerah, obviously, it teaches us all this. Like we said, Rasulullah ﷺ in Mecca was focusing on the Muslim individuals first, raising the iman, building the iman into their hearts, injecting them with faith, so they get closer to Allah. subhanahu wa ta'ala, showing them the importance of faith, tasting the beauty of worshipping Allah, the beauty of Iman. So when they migrated, so they were prepared to leave everything behind, all their wealth, all their families, everything, leave it behind and migrate to a new, different city with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And for those people in Medina as well to give up half of whatever they owned to those who migrated from Mecca, that no one would do that unless there is strong faith in Allah. They've tasted the beauty of worshipping Allah and the beauty of the closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was raising those Sahaba, the early Muslims and the Sahaba, was raising them like little kids. He had like a vision. And he was raising them slowly, slowly. And that's the same way with the kids. Because unfortunately, a lot of the Muslim families, they just like, yeah, they get married, they have kids, one after the other. And that's like, oh, that's it. That's the beauty of life. But before, you have to know that's the biggest project in life, the biggest investment in life, more than anything else. More than studying, more than having a business, more than anything else. Kids, because obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask the parents about them on the day of judgment. How they raised them, how they looked after them, did they teach them about Islam? Were they good examples to them? Not just teach them, but you have to be a good example to them. They need to see Islam in your characteristics and your manners, because sometimes you find a lot of the parents, they say to the kids, oh, you have to do salah, you have to do this. But when they see the father who doesn't pray on time, for example, or doing, whatever, smoking or drinking, how are you going to say to your child, for example, if a father is drinking, how are you going to say to his child, don't drink or don't smoke? If the child being brought up that way, looking at his father doing that particular thing. So there are different factors that participate to that. But going back to the seerah, Rasulullah was leading by example. So they've seen, like when Aisha radiallahu anha was asked, as you all know, she said he was like a Quran. His manners were the Quran, like he was a Quran walking on this earth. You could see the Quran implemented in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Sahaba learned that from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and even the leaders who came after him, like Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, and the ones that came after, they were leading by example because they learned from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there are so many stories, and some of them they will be mentioned in the seerah. There's so many stories, some of them will be mentioned in the seerah. One of the Sahabi, I think his name was Abu Darda, and his wife, she gave the garden for the sake of Allah. They used to own that garden. And then he didn't know that she gave it for the sake of Allah because he was out. By the time he came back, she already given it for the sake of Allah. So he was eating, him and his child were eating from that garden. And then his wife was coming, running to him, said, it doesn't belong to us anymore. I gave it for the sake of Allah. So he put his hands into the mouth of his child, trying to take that fruit from his mouth, because that doesn't belong to them. That's piety, subhanallah. So these people are, who learned Islam from Rasulullah, learned it from the Sahaba, learns the proper Islam. Islam is leading by example, not just preaching to people, but you try your best to be a good example to others. And like I said, those who are Muslims by names, there are different factors that, cause that. And one of them, like I said, is because the way they've been raised in their families. And the main thing, to be honest with you, in regards to this is for the next generation, for example, when they get married and have their own kids, is not to make the same mistakes. Because we do tend to find like a lot of people, they've been through it themselves. They've seen their families. Obviously, like we say, your family are your family. It doesn't matter. They're good Muslims, they're not good Muslims. They're Muslims, they're not Muslims. They are your family. Like we say, we can't choose our families. So we have to be good to our families, no matter what. However, a lot of people, for example, they did not grow up in a good Muslim house, but they should not make that mistake with their own kids when they have them one day. They should not make that same mistake. That's the main thing. There's no point on complaining about, well, my parents, they were never good Muslims. They've never shown me the real way of Islam. They've never taught me about Islam, because that's not going to change anything. But the main thing is you just learn from it. You make dua for your parents, obviously, and you learn from it. So you say, well, you know what? I'm not going to make that same mistake with my own kids. So yeah. So, so number one, we said Rasulullah he builds the masjid. That was priority number one. Priority number two is bringing the Muslims together. And number three was the Muslims and the non-Muslims coming together, and he had that constitution between all of them so they can live in peace all together in Medina. So anything that you want to mention, you want to say before we move on? No? All right, let me ask you a question then. So what do we learn, or what something that you learn from this migration from Mecca to Medina and all what's happening now? All this, like the focus, the masjid, bringing the Muslims together, bringing the Muslims and non-Muslims together, the migration, the Sahaba, those who are from Medina, that they were like willing to give up half of that what they owned, to those who migrated from Mecca. So what do we learn? What do you learn from this? What does this teach us?
After hardship comes ease.
Also, after hardship comes ease, yeah. Think about even the beginning of the Seerah, when we started talking the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the beginning when he became the messenger, all the hard times. Think about some of the early Muslims that migrated twice. Think about all this now. And then we come into a new stage, a new chapter of the da'wah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now it's a new city, it's a new place, a lot of new people. Before they had to put up with the Quraysh. Now are different people there. So what do we learn? What things do we take with us from all this?
Have patience and pray trust in Allah.
All right, so have patience and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think about it. Try and think about a few things. Think about all these incidents, all of this.
But the concerns of people was just Islam and Allah, and to support the Prophet, and it's not that they left all their lives and just concerned about Islam itself.
Anything else?
No, but the moment in Taif when the Prophet was getting abused, but he said, as long as Allah is happy and pleased with me, then everything else is okay. So it's it just shows back to the main objective is just to please Allah.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. So there are obviously so many things that we learn from the Seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that we learn from the Meccan time, the time in Mecca, the incidents as we discussed, the events that took place in Mecca and everything. And we all need to remember that all this was happening by the knowledge and the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All the hardships, all the calamities, all the hard times, they were happening by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it was a test for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and for the Sahaba. And it was different times. To be honest with you, if you ponder upon all this, look at the times who become Muslim first. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he brought 5 of the Sahaba with him, the early Muslims, and then after, people are going to be going to Abyssinia and stuff. And then Umar radiallahu anhu, Hamza first becoming a Muslim, and then Umar radiallahu anhu. So every time there is something going on, and every time, like you said, after difficulty comes ease. There is some hard times happening, hardships happening, and then Allah will bring ease after that. Before Hamza became Muslim, we know what happened. Abu Jahl was even abusing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that is a hardship for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then Allah brought that ease by his uncle Hamza, someone that he loved, someone that was closer to him. That's his uncle, that's his family, his own blood, who was not Muslim, and then Allah would bring him to Islam, comforting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then after that, Umar radiallahu anhu arda, he was the enemy of Rasulullah, the enemy of the Muslims. Allah will bring him. And then after, some hardships will come. Khadija will die, his uncle will die. So hard times now again, and then the Ta'if again. But then the reward, Isra and Mi'raj. Allah, rewarding Rasulullah, raising his status. All these are lessons not just for Rasulullah and his companions, but there are lessons for the Muslim Ummah, the Muslim nation to learn from them. And then after that, the migration from Mecca to Medina, giving up everything, leaving your own city, your own people, your own country, and everything, and doing that migration for what? For the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then starting a new chapter in Medina. And it's going to be a whole lot of different challenges, different calamities, different hardships. Because now the chapter that we started is Muslims together, obviously first building the masjid, building the base for the Muslims, building the hub of the Muslim Ummah, where they're going to learn, where they're going to come together, where they're going to have that love, peace, and everything. And then how the non-Muslims going to live with the Muslims. But now he's going to have to put up with a different thing. In the time of Mecca, and we should be aware of this now, in the time of Mecca, the Quraysh were not Muslims. They had no sort of agreements with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The main concern for them was him not to preach Islam, not to convey the message of Allah to others. They didn't want people to become Muslims, so they want to stop him from his da'wah. Now he's going to live with people, with 3 tribes, that they're going to have agreements with each other. There is a constitution that they all have to follow, all of them. But now the challenges are different now. You're going to see what's going to happen. So now what I want us to do, as we're learning about the Medina time now, you're going to see, I want us to, as we're learning, to be aware of the time in Mecca, what the Quraysh used to do, and now what these people in Medina are going to do. Now see the non-Muslims of the Quraysh and the non-Muslims of Medina. So I want us to be aware of that, to compare, to reflect now. Wow, subhanAllah, those people in Mecca, this is how they used to do it, this is what they used to do, but now these people in Medina, this is how they attack Rasulullah, these are the challenges he's going to put up with, these are the calamities he's going to go through, So different things. But one thing, and the important thing that we need to learn is that a Muslim person, Muslims, they should have a message that they carry in their life. Like Rasulullah and like the Sahaba. For that message, they were willing to give up anything. Because he's carrying the message of Allah and the Sahaba. But I want us to learn a few things. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, because some people, they think, if you become a good Muslim, and if you become closer to Allah, you have to give up your life. Meaning, you cannot enjoy your life. You're going to become someone, like we say, who is boring. You don't have a life. And the reason being you don't have a life is because you are closer to Allah. Because you're a pious person, meaning he's a boring person. He doesn't enjoy life. But that's not the case here. The evidence for that, number one, who were some of the Sahaba that we mentioned who had a lot of money? Yeah, Abdul Rahman bin Auf is one of them. Yeah, Uthman radiallahu anhu. So Abdul Rahman bin Auf radiallahu anhu, he was a millionaire in Mecca. And like we said before, he gave up everything. He went to Medina, he has nothing now. Nothing. Even 1 dirham, that's the coin they had that time. Even £1, for example. Imagine someone who had £1 million and now £1 he doesn't have it. That he has nothing. But why? Because he knew that he got a vision and a mission in his life to convey the message of Allah. A Muslim is someone who is carrying the message of Allah. It doesn't have to be only the scholar who carries that message of Islam, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it doesn't mean that you don't need to have a life. So this is something important that we need to know, because there is a lot of stigma attached to people who are, in a way, like practicing Muslims, between brackets, like we say, practicing Muslims, they look at them or they look down on them because a practicing Muslim who wouldn't go to university, he doesn't have any degree, he wouldn't work in higher places, like a high paid job, for example. There's that. Why that stigma attached with this kind of people? Oh, she's a good Muslimah, but meaning she's not educated, she's ignorant, she's this, she's that, That is something that we need to correct. People should not be thinking like that. And that shows you, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, he was a good Muslim, he's a Sahabi, one of the biggest Sahaba, and he's one of the 10 that have been promised paradise by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but yet he was a businessman. He was a millionaire. So even though he was with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to support Rasulullah, he used to spend for the sake of Allah, but he used to have his own business. He used to trade in the market. He used to go buy and sell and everything. That's why he became rich. Again, in Medina. And that's why you see some of the Sahaba, they narrated more ahadith than others. So we call them the scholars of the Sahaba. So they were focusing on seeking knowledge. So they are educated. Aisha radiallahu anha, she's the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the mother of the believers, and she's a scholar. Even the Sahaba after Rasulullah died, they used to go to Aisha radiallahu anha to ask her. So there is a big Sahaba going to a woman, which is Aisha radiallahu anha, to ask her about so many things. And then so many narrations of ahadith and fiqh matters when they have a dispute between them or they don't agree about something, the Sahaba. One of them says, I heard from Rasulullah this version of the hadith, and the other one say, no, I heard a different version of this hadith. Or some of them, they say, I haven't heard anything from Rasulullah in regards to this specific matter. And then they will say, well, you know what, let's go to Aisha radiallahu anha, and she'll teach them. She said, in regards to this matter, I remember Rasulullah saying this and that. I remember Rasulullah doing this and that. So the Muslim person should always carry the message of Islam with them, regardless where they are, in university, if he's a doctor, if he's a solicitor, he's a teacher, he's anything. Whatever you're doing, it does not stop you from carrying the message of Islam, and carrying the message of Islam does not stop you from achieving in this life. See, there's no contradiction as long as whatever that person is doing is halal. As long as it is halal, there's no problem. There's no contradiction there. So Islam does not stop you from achieving in this life, and achieving in this life should not stop you from becoming a good Muslim and for carrying the message of Islam in this life. And that's the main concern for the Muslims. Every Muslim, that's what Rasulullah said, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً, meaning convey about me even one ayah, one hadith, convey that about me. Just even if you know one hadith, you don't, because some people, they think only when I'm a scholar, only then I can teach people about Islam or preach about Islam or say to someone about Islam. Even if you know one hadith, one ayah, you learn something about one hadith or something, you go and share it with others, with friends, family, whatever, you share it with them. So yeah, so there are so many things obviously to take with us from the time of Mecca, from the migration, from the early stages of the life in Medina, the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina. And that shows you the Muslims should be organized. That's why Rasulullah sallallahu he started by organizing everything, and by organizing everything, meaning the first thing is the masjid. Somewhere where we're going to come, pray to Allah all together. There is a process that we have to follow, that we have to do. And then if anyone needs something, they have to come to the masjid. The place where we teach is the masjid, meaning we don't just do things randomly. So the Muslims should be organized. Also, when he brought the Muslims together, and after the Muslims and the Jews together, and he had the constitution, the agreement, that shows, again, there's Muslims always organized, and they follow something that organizes their life. Your life is not chaos. Obviously, we follow the Quran, so it teaches us how to practice the religion, how to worship Allah, how to conduct ourselves, how to deal with Muslims, non-Muslims, neighbors, how to repent to Allah when we make mistakes, how to do everything. So it's a way of life, it's a constitution that we need to follow. And that's why, and that's what Rasulullah ﷺ was practicing. He was following that ideology or that method in life, in real life. He didn't say, well, you know what? We are Muslims, we have the Quran, we follow it, we don't care about these people here now. We don't care about them. No. But he organized the life in that society because they all live in under one society. So they need to be organized. And a lot of scholars, they say, even a Muslim family in the house, they need to have some sort of constitution that they follow. And obviously, as Muslims, our constitution is the Quran, is the deen. But even in the house, they say there must be some guidelines that they follow between them. And that makes life easier for them. So, meaning they all know their rights and responsibilities. They all know, for example, if one of them makes some mistakes, this is what they need to do. If you've done something to your brother or your sister or your wife or husband or mom and dad, whatever, you know what you need to do. You need to go and apologize to them. Correct that mistake. You have some sort of like guidelines. You agree there's no, don't go on the phone after 10 o'clock or after 11. That's it. You shouldn't go on the phone. That the kids, they should not sit and watch TV for 4 or 5 hours. That's not allowed. So there are guidelines. You don't give them a phone to play with for like the whole evening just for you to sit with peace and quiet. Because some people, they just want to get rid of the kids. So they give them the phone to play for 4 or 5 hours, and they are polluting their minds and everything that time, but they don't know. If you give to a child a phone for 4 or 5 hours, that's very dangerous for their brain, for everything, So there are guidelines. So Muslims, the main thing I want to say is Muslims, they should follow guidelines, even in the house. That's very important. So Rasulullah ﷺ is teaching us from this. This is how Muslims should be. And then we learn, obviously, the love of Rasulullah ﷺ. And the love of Rasulullah ﷺ comes through doing what? Learning about him. Yeah? Anything else?
Follow his teachings.
Yeah? Follow his teachings, yeah? And that shows you, some people in Medina, as you know, they became Muslims after that first group became Muslims in Mecca, and then they went. But after some of them become Muslims, but they've never seen Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But they've learned about him. They've learned about him, and they started following him, following his teachings. That's why they were so excited to see him when he was coming from Mecca to Medina. And they all wanted to host Rasulullah in their houses. They haven't even seen him. They've never seen him. But see, they learned about him and they were following him already. They had that love for Rasulullah. Unlike Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, look, he wanted to have him in his house and everything. And as we said, he wanted him to be upstairs, not downstairs, because as a respect for Rasulullah. And when him and his wife spilled water and stuff, the blanket they cover with, they were mopping the floor with it. They didn't care. They're going to cover with that blanket after. But see the love of Rasulullah. So that shows you those people in Medina, because the people in Mecca, they lived with him. They grew up with him. Those who are same age as him, obviously, or just a bit younger or a bit older than him. Even before he was the messenger, they grew up with him. They used to see him every day. And then after Islam, same thing. They developed that love for Rasulullah, the Meccans. But the people of Medina, see, so because the focus here in the people of Medina, why? Because that applies to us. For the people of Medina before he migrated from Mecca to Medina, because they haven't seen him. They haven't seen him. The same as us. We've never seen Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We've never seen him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But we learn about him. We heard about him, and we should follow him. That's the only thing, and that's how we develop the love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what other things do we take with us from all this? Like I said, the Mecca and the migration, the early stages of the migration now. because what's coming, the next chapters are, like I said before, the time in Mecca. There are a lot of literature about it, a lot of information about it, a lot of incidents happened and took place, but not as much as the time in Medina. Like I said, the time in Medina, so much happened in Medina, so much more, way more than what happened in Mecca, so much. So obviously it's a lot. But before we go into that, because it's like heavy topics then, but it's very important to try and reflect upon all that, the Mecca, the early stages of Medina. Let's try and reflect. Think about anything that there's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. It's just us thinking. It's like you're watching a video and it's only small clips, and it's just like the clips are just about the main events, the main incidents, you know. So you have a 1 minute video, for example, and there are like 2-3 minutes clips, and each clip talks about just the main thing, the main incidents, and the early stages of Medina, and this love, peace, harmony between the Muslims themselves, you know, of the Meccans, the people from Medina, the Aus and Khazraj and everything, and then after obviously the Jews and the Muslims having that constitution and that agreement so they can live together in one community and one society. So think about certain things that we could take with us, things that we, you know, or things that are very touching, things that obviously the whole Seerah of Rasulullah, of course, it touches the heart, but some incidents, they touch the heart more than others, you know. So anything that we could take.
The fact that Jibril alayhi salam came down to Rasulullah with the message, and then slowly people started accepting Islam. It was like the journey they went through. Then when they got to Medina, they actually got a strong foundation there. That's one thing that I look at.
MashaAllah. Okay. Okay, well, let me rephrase the question then. Something that probably touched your heart more than any other incident.
There's one which touched me.
Yeah.
A moment in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
That's the same.
When they were being attacked. He was walking down the streets of Makkah, being attacked. Everyone was mocking him. You know, during the days of the time when he was delivering Islam, you know, when just in the beginning,
Yeah.
his prophet, people are mocking him and throwing things at him, and the angel Jibril came down.
Yeah.
The angel Jibril alayhi salatu wasalam came down and asked him, all these people have hashed towards you, they've mocked at you, they've mocked at your prophecy, they've mocked at the message you're trying to portray to them. Do you want me to crush this mountain? Do you want me to bring down
to demolish these two mountains upon these people? Yeah.
Do you want me to crush them between and destroy all of them? And he said no. He made the most merciful and so merciful towards them. And said,
Yes.
No.
He
He asked them to have mercy on them and said, and he made dua. You know, he prayed and hoped that the generation that comes after them, the offspring that comes after them, will embrace Islam and carry on the religion of Islam too.
MashaAllah. Yeah, so that shows the mercy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was not seeking revenge from those people, and that's the Ta'if incidents. And obviously his main concern was people becoming Muslims, you know, and conveying the message of Allah. So what are the things that touched?
For me is he's caring about his people, his nation, and he left Mecca last after he make sure that everyone like migrate to Medina and they are safe. Like if our like the Muslims presidents in the country nowadays like follow his teachings and that they take care of their nation.
Yeah.
Our situation will be like the same as now.
MashaAllah. Anything from the sisters? Anything? No?
I think so. And Khadija and Abu Talib, they both passed away in the same year. He was still patient, and Allah is preparing him for something big. Because we say in Medina, there's lots when I come in by Makkah, so Allah is preparing him for something major events. So these are the only two pillars he was relying on, Abu Talib and then Khadija, and they both passed away in the same month.
Say Islam's strong character, so like everything that he went through, like if it happened to like any ordinary person, like everyone would be complaining, why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? My mother passed away, my grandfather passed away. Now I got the message, no one's telling everyone, no one's accepting it. Like never once did the Prophet complain. He kept the strong character and the patience all the way through.
So yeah, just obviously I'm going to stop here inshallah, but just to conclude quickly, just there are so many heart-touching events in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and like I said, when we started in the beginning, early lessons of the Seerah classes, like I said, we need to be aware of what we're learning all the time. As we're learning, we need to be aware of what's going on, what's happening, because that's very important. And I want to sometimes, even on your own time, just sit down and reflect and ponder about all this. The early stages, because honestly, when you do that, it makes such a huge difference. And it makes you look at it from a different point of view. And it makes you revive your heart, and it makes you live the incidents and the events, and it makes you appreciate Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam more, and it makes you appreciate your religion more, especially that the month of Ramadan is coming and everything. It's a good time to reflect upon all the Seerah lessons that we've learned from the beginning until now. Like we said, when he was born as an orphan, and even before the Mecca, like we said, the Mecca before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the remains of the previous religions, them were practicing idol worshipping and everything. The year of the elephant when he was born, and that incident, and it happened in the same year when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born, because that in itself, like we said, is a huge lesson for the Meccans themselves. Someone coming to destroy the Kaaba, the sacred house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then Allah will punish them there and then. But in the meantime, it was the birth of the mercy to mankind. People practicing idol worshipping, but Allah in the same year will give His permission for Rasulullah sallallahu to be born in that year, someone who's going to come to convey the message of Allah and to convey the message that people should worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone and not to associate partners with Him. And then he was born as an orphan, and Halima Sa'diyah, when she came, no one wanted to take him, and then they took him, and all what happened. When his chest was open and everything, and then Halima was scared, his mother wasn't scared at all. He was blessed from early stages of his life, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then, his grandfather looking after him, Abdul Muttalib. And Abdul Muttalib was one of the leaders of the Quraysh. People used to respect Abdul Muttalib and everything. He used to love him. He used to look after him. He used to give him love and affection and everything. And then he died. And then his uncle will look after him. All this, when you sit down on your own time and think about these main incidents here. And him being a shepherd when he was younger. And even though he's going to be the messenger, but he had to go through all that. And then he used to work for Khadija. He was working for a woman, you know, he used to travel and everything with his servants, Maisara. But then see, even like we said, the clouds were shading him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that shows that he was blessed all the time, you know. And then him getting married to Khadija radiallahu anha, and how much support she will give him, and then the Jibreel alayhi salam coming to him to the cave. But what did we say he did before Jibreel came to him in the cave? What did he used to do those days? Yeah, see, he used to go to the cave a few days before, and he used to go every day and he used to ponder upon the creation of Allah, upon what was happening around him in Mecca, in the Quraysh. So that was something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him do before he revealed the message to him. And that's why we have to ponder and reflect upon everything that we do, upon the creation of Allah, upon what we're learning in regards to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then, you know, him becoming the messenger, the early stages of da'wah and everything. It's just, you know, and him with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, his best friend, you know, following him and everything, spending for the sake of Rasulullah and spending for the sake of Allah, and all the incidents, you know. And then his wife died, his uncle died, and him praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that people will become Muslims. And he used to hurt him a lot when people did not used to believe in him, did not used to follow him. He used to blame himself. He used to go hard on himself until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, revealed the ayah to him, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. You do not guide whomever you want. Allah guides whom He wants. So it's not in your hands. In your hand is to convey the message to them, to teach them, to educate them, to remind them. But Allah is the one who guides. But he used to blame himself for them not becoming Muslims because he wanted them to become Muslims. He wanted them to taste the beauty of Islam, of faith, of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the death of Khadija, the death of Abu Talib and everything, you know, the incidents of Ta'if, and then Allah rewarding him by the journey of Isra and Mi'raj. Like I said, it's like a 1 minute video, and these are all different clips that we need to go for, reflect upon, and sit down and just reflect upon all of them. Just that night journey is an honor, like I said before. Allah has honored him, but it's an honor, but also it's not easy for anyone. It's not easy, even for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Can you imagine someone who was leading the salah with all the messengers behind him, all of them behind him, and he's gonna through the heavens and see all those messengers that he saw, and he's gonna go back to real life and deal with all the problems, all the calamities, all the hardships, all the challenges, all the abuse, all the torture. Just that, not easy. Something not easy in itself. Someone who've been, you know, leading the salah, you've been through the heavens, you've seen the top prophets and messengers of Allah, and now you're coming back to be tortured, to be abused, and this and that. Even that, subhanAllah, that in itself is a huge thing to happen to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know. But yet he did not complain. Yet he was patient. He had that trust in Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that was a lesson for him. And Allah showing him to show his ummah and to show his Sahaba that's what waiting for you on the day of judgment is better than this life. Your reward is immense. So meaning this is only a short time you're here for a test, and you will go to what you will enjoy the most with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah made him see how those messengers, they were enjoying their life in the heavens, in paradise. And Allah made him see on his right side the people of Jannah, on his left side the people of hellfire. So coming back to his Sahaba, to people, meaning he got more of an understanding now about heaven and hell, about, you know, the joy and happiness of paradise and the torture of hellfire, to show his people and his Sahaba and everything. And then that's why, like I said, Allah is preparing him. So the migration is a huge event, it's something major. But Allah prepared him before So when he orders him to migrate, it's easy for him because why? He's prepared for the reward. And the Sahaba, he knows the reward more, and the Sahaba too. So it's easy for them to leave their families, their houses, everything. Because nowadays, if you compare it to, personally, I know so many people who got 4 or 5 kids, for example, and they say, oh, it's a big challenge for me raising my kids here. It's, I just want to go somewhere. So a Muslim country, for example, somewhere. But when it comes to the main thing, to the financial part of it, that's when they are stuck. They stop. Because they think I will not get the same financial support in a different country as I get here. So therefore, I'm obliged to stay. They look at things differently, Unlike those Sahaba who were willing to give up everything. Everything they had, they gave it up, for the sake of Allah. So all those incidents, the early stages in Medina, people having the love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, excited to see him, willing to see him, wanting to see him, willing to do anything for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are things I think that we need to sit down and reflect and ponder upon them before we carry on learning, inshallah, next Jumu'ah. But these are very important things. Honestly, it's very important to ponder and reflect and think about this in order to increase and develop the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And like I said, we don't want to be learning in a robotic way of learning, but we want to learn and live with the moment that we are learning about. So we develop that proper love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we don't take Islam for granted, and we don't take Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions for granted. We appreciate how much they've been through, how much they had to put up with, and the strong faith that they had in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we should have in Allah too. Because Allah we worship is the same Allah that they used to worship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that used to reward them is the same Allah that will reward us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they used to trust is the same Allah that we should trust. So so these are a few things, obviously, just as a reminder for all of us, inshallah. What's coming, inshallah, in the Seerah is more, obviously, is major things will happen now. It's more than what happened in Mecca. So we'll start next Jumu'ah, inshallah. I will stop here. If you have any questions, sorry that I took a bit longer today. I'm just hoping that we've benefited from it, inshallah. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, inshallah. Like I said, sisters, those who want, if you are willing to carry on, I'm more than happy, inshallah, to carry on until you leave in university in the summer. If you want to stop and then start in September, that's up to you. But like I said, I'm more than willing, I'm more than happy, inshallah, to carry on doing for those who are here on campus, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.